Welcome to the Creative Catalyst podcast. I am your host, Lianne Baron, and I am joined by Luke Hurd, who, let me actually just give you a shout out today, Luke. It's a special day. It is Luke's birthday.
It is
Happy
my birthday.
Luke.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here on my birthday.
Well, I appreciate you taking time on your special day to share with us and have a little chit chat with me. I'm really grateful for this day because it's brought you into the world and you have been a shining light in my life, but also for so many others, not just in our community, but, I think everyone that runs into you just really understands what an inspiration and what a helping soul you really are. You've been such a great inspiration and person to kind of guide me along when I definitely needed some help, but you're kind of fun. So, I appreciate you and just a little praise for Luke today. So
hey, thanks. I appreciate it. You are one of my favorite people in the whole world. And it's been quite a journey and an honor to be alongside with you as all the different journeys we've both kind of taken together have weaved themselves together, interwoven themselves. Yes. So it's been great.
Love it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, happy birthday. We're doing this kind of weekly check-in, we'll call it, just to see what's going on, just and catch up, right? And talk about kind of what was happening, if there's anything that's happening in media, and then also talking a little bit about maybe something that's relevant to us that we've seen in kind of fairly recent history. And we will talk a little bit today about things that are top of mind for us when we are dealing with our day-to-day. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but let's talk about what went on this week. What did you see across the socials or in the media?
So this week, I did happen to see that there was a bit of a leaked video for the Quest 3. So this is a pretty cool thing if you're into AR or MR, because this is yet another step forward towards the ubiquity of AR and MR. So what I love so much about seeing the leaks are surprising, honestly. I'm a little shocked at the leaks, because you don't see quite this level of unboxing leaks on the device level of say somebody like Apple or something. So it's surprising to see them, but nonetheless. Kudos to all the developers who worked on that. I know it's a little rough to have your work displayed in such a lo-fi fashion when you put so much hard work into it, but it's exciting nonetheless. And what that means for people like me and anyone else who's listening probably is that this is yet another device for us to be able to create experiences on, and this also has full color pass through from what I've read, and just like the Quest Pro does. So this is kind of like a hybrid between the Quest 2 and the Quest Pro, and you got some great upgraded controllers in there with like touch sensitive, pressure sensitive pads on the top, which are very similar to the Quest Pros. But really, it's that full color pass through that I'm looking forward to, and I think they're also using some different cameras on this one too than the Quest Pro. So we should get even a better version of a color pass through on this headset. So I'm excited. How about you? What was what are your feelings on this leak?
Well, I can speak to it a little bit more freely right now. I think that I really enjoyed the way that the audience responds to these kinds of things. I think it's fascinating that one of the immediate responses is always, "Oh, I think this is a marketing ploy." So we'll see. And It could be a technique. It could be a technique to kind of get ahead of it. I love watching the speculation. I'm one for more of the psychology and the consumer behavior and those types of things. That's what I look at. And if that's what people take from this, kudos to them. It's all speculation at this point. And as you said, to the developers, I shout out to them for what they've done and working on this. And it will have its moment for sure. We're coming up on it soon enough. And like you look at the time, we're like a month away from it. So
it's I had this conversation with somebody on Twitter a while ago that was basically like, I felt it was rough to see the CADs out there, those CAD files of the headsets, because as someone who works in AR and MR, I get access to CAD files from brands, and they're pretty it's a pretty big deal. I mean, I've had CAD files for automotive brands and stuff, and they don't give those away lightly to have every single screw down to the millimeter available to where people can just suddenly make third-party pieces and reverse engineer your stuff. And so it is, it's unfortunate to see that out there. And when it was first popped out there, I made a comment that was like, I feel bad for the engineers. And someone was like, they're getting paid. They don't care. And I was like, that's not really it though. It's more like it's like you're working on a film and you're part of the crew and then it leaks, or you're working on an album and it leaks and it leaks in like a bad format that's not the way that you wish that people experienced it for the first time. So, as somebody who has done that stuff, it's unfortunate to see that. And I wish we were a little more empathetic to the engineers who did put such hard work into this. But the fact of the matter is that somebody got a box with that Quest 3 and it's the full production box. I imagine because, Kinect's coming up here pretty soon. So there's probably a couple out there. And somebody recorded something. So whether that is a promo or not, I don't know. But regardless, I know what you're saying. It gets people excited, and people do tend to focus on the new features and stuff that are on there. That there was one that wasn't even announced that was kind of leaked on there that had to do with the way that the glasses work.
Oh yes. Yeah. Well, we'll wait for the full reveal, and we'll let them have their moment and their crafted messaging around that to celebrate the work that they've put together for that. So
I was almost convinced last year when the Quest Pro leaked that was, I was like, maybe this is a ploy, because it was right before they were going to do it. And I remember reaching out to you, sending you the video and being like, what in the world?
I'm like, oh
but after seeing the response from like Boz and some other people, I was like, there's no way this is a marketing ploy. They're not super happy that this is how the world is experiencing this launch of this. So hopefully this year, and in the devices going forward after this one, I think this is probably one of the last big leaks they're going to have, because I think those all kind of leaked all together, the Quest Pro and the Quest 3 stuff. Yeah. They'll probably tighten the ship a little bit after this, and then we'll probably see less. But the good news is we'll definitely be seeing more.
Yeah, it's all exciting either way, regardless. We're headed in a direction where, and we talk about this so much, that we've been so used to building for mobile, and that's the current lens that we're looking through is the social cameras on the different platforms. But it's going to be this switch out now to this new lens, to these headsets, which are going to get smaller to glasses, that I think you and I and so many people in the community continue to be very excited about, with lots of opportunities abound. So actually, let's roll into the next topic, which is, when these opportunities come forward, whether it be, exploratory work and alphas and betas, or if it be work that we are doing with brands and partnerships, or even just art, AR and mixed reality for art's sake. There's so many stakeholders that come into these equations, right, for the experiences that are being built. And I think you and I are often asked, because we do step into a lot of these, builds that are very well covered in the media, and, like the large experiences that we did, say, for example, for Coachella. And people say, how were these creators selected for these opportunities, right? So let's maybe take a few minutes to talk about that. How, when you have high profile, low profile, all these different types of experiences, all ranges of opportunity with different skill sets, how are people selected? And maybe we can talk a little bit first about the actual roster and the pool of creative that we can pull from, right? Yeah. So, that's my job. That's what I've been doing for the last couple of years, very formally with Meta, was to make sure that we are pairing the right creators with the opportunities that come across my desk. And so I essentially have a really good sense of people's capabilities, what they can do, their actual skill set, their technical skill set. But then on top of that, also how they manage themselves in conversations, right? These soft skills that we talk about a lot, on how they show up in a lot of the conversations when they present their work, and when they're speaking with brands, et cetera, and the partners, that they're doing so in a professional way, and that they're very considerate of all of the stakeholders who are there. And the thing I want to mention about this is, and the thing that's, I think, most important for people to understand, is that those of us that are looking for talent are doing our very best. It is a really wide web out there, and there is so much to see, especially in the feeds, et cetera. It's kind of impossible to expect us to keep eyes on absolutely everything. So do yourselves a favor, point number one, and share your work. share it in community, etc. But if you have a very specific goal, for example, if you wanted to do something in partnership with Meta, reach out to someone who is either connected to Meta or that is working on projects like this at Meta. Myself, for example, I certainly encourage folks to slide into my DMs. I don't mind that. I do my very best to keep up and respond. But I love to see your work. And the thing is that it's a busy, busy day. And I don't always get to sit on social scrolling. So send me your stuff. I love to see it. Right. And then from there, we can talk about different ways on, how you're approaching these opportunities. If you're bringing yourself out there, if your portfolio is up to speed, if it needs some work, I will definitely give you feedback. And you can also ask other people too. I'd recommend that maybe you don't necessarily ask people who are friends or family, because maybe they don't actually know what they're looking for in your work.
That's
right. So certainly aligning to people who are going to be evaluating the work. In this case, if it's a partnership with any of the platforms, make sure you're talking to those people and understanding what it is that they're looking for. And then saying, hey, these are the things I've done. Does this align to what it is that you're looking for? And hopefully, they can say very concisely, this is great. Good job. Keep doing what you're doing. Or like to see a little bit more in this area. Yep. And so that's kind of where visibility comes into play, and how we get to see a lot of the creators. Where do you, like, when it comes to having an idea and a roster, because I know for the projects that you're doing too, like you need to have a roster of creators that you pull from.
That's
and
right.
How are you finding them, or how do you kind of know who to choose from?
When you're pairing? It's I would say the interesting thing about this world is that it's pretty small right now, meaning that it's not hundreds of thousands of people deep. So it's not hard for a creator to get their name out there. Mm-hmm. It's not hard for you to put your work out there and share it on places where people care about the work, and get on someone's radar. So, one of the places that I look, of course, is LinkedIn as one of those places. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's often overlooked. It's kind of like, oh, that's a little bit too corporate, but you'd be surprised. I am one of the top sharers in AR, VR, that hashtag, especially in augmented reality on LinkedIn. And I just share my own work. That's all I really do. And other people do the same. And I'm telling you, there's people out there who want to see that stuff. Mm-hmm. What I think is so interesting about what you said there, that's really important, is when you do share your work, sharing on LinkedIn is great. And I'm telling you, you're going to get some great feedback. But most of those people aren't going to be critical peers of yours. They're going to be people who are definitely going to be impressed at your work, because AR is new and it's cool that you're working in it, and it looks cool. But they're not going to be able to give you the type of feedback that someone who is also a professional in the space would. So, so back to that point about, not showing your work to your parents. My parents are always going to tell me that what I did is amazing, and they're not going to find they're not going to find a way to creatively plus it up. They might ask me questions about how something works or whatever, but you don't get the same feedback as you would if I share my work with you, or if I share it with another one of my peers out there in the world, Marc Wakefield or whoever, and just say, hey, here's this thing that I made. And I'm having some questions about X, Y, and Z on it. That is another thing, keeping it succinct. So when you do ask for feedback, you're giving a pretty easy layup to the person that you're asking feedback on. If you ask someone to do too much work, you probably won't get very good quality results back. So when you ask them, ask very specifically, hey, I'm working on this animation intro piece, and I want to know, do you think it's quick enough? That's an easy thing for somebody to test and get back and go, yep. And then they might even offer some more feedback at that point. So it's that kind of stuff that's really helpful. And then, but that also helps build your network. When you go out and you ask peers, I'm also one of your peers. Mm-hmm. If you're asking me these questions about how things work, I know that you're working on this stuff. And I can't tell you how many times I will be working on, my day job. I work at an agency, marketing agency, and I can't tell you how many brands that I work on where I will get an idea on my plate and the creator is in my sights the minute I see the idea. It's like it'll be a music idea or an idea with with a stage and lights, or a thing where they want to have you like do hand signs. I know who built all these because I'm in this community and I'm friends with everybody. So it's about getting your work out there, and making sure that people know what you do. What do you do? So, I mentioned Marc. Marc had a pretty good corner of the market there early on for horror stuff. I mean, that was what he did. It was like he loved transformative effects. He loved taking people and transforming them. And let me tell you, when those ideas come on my plate, I know who the master of transformations is.
Absolutely.
Or somebody like Piper, who does, more like future fashion type things. I see that type of work come across my plate, and I'm like, I know who does this. Or Paige Piskin, or there's a million other creators out there that I could sit here and name off and be like, oh, and they're the master of this. But the reason I know they're the master of this is because they put their work out there, and it's all about sharing. It's all about just sharing and trying to elevate yourself amongst your peers.
I want to add there's always a little piece of magic though sometimes when it comes to the synergy and the pairing, that it's not necessarily just about sharing your technical expertise, but your aspirations. So I'm going to bring the example of Matthew Chen, which is a great example from Coachella.
Love this story.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And there are a couple of them that happened in Coachella. And I align that to synergy because people have shared their aspirations for not just what they want to accomplish. Like, hey, I want to improve 3D, or look at me, I'm taking Unity, I'm building my skills here. And I had this new skill set that I'm working on. But not only that, like I had put out this question to the community, like if you could come up with your ultimate partnership this year, big dream, whatever you could do, and no limitation. And I remembered Matthew Chen's answer, and I remembered a lot of people's answers, but Matthew Chen in particular gave an answer. And so when the opportunity came on at Coachella that Blackpink was going to be headlining and that we had secured an effect for them, that instantly Matthew Chen's answer came to mind. And now, not only that, now I compare his hopes and aspiration for what he wants in his life, like his absolute bucket list item to work with Blackpink. And this guy has 3D, and he has this capacity to do kind of ethereal, that kind of like soft, the glowy shader work as well. I was like, it hit all the buttons and it was instant. And like you say, it's just a flash, and it's really easy for those of us who are doing the partnership, not only to quickly identify, okay, it's all the marks and then some, but then there's that additional element of like, it's not just checking boxes, but it's actually fulfilling someone's dream, which makes the whole thing so much also easier to pitch to the team, the other stakeholders in this equation. And, like you can speak to the stakeholders because as well, from your perspective, you've got a ton that you're dealing with every single day, right? It's not just the creators. It's not just those of us, say, who are on the product side, on the meta side of things, but on the brand side. And there are so many layers of stakeholders, right?
So many. And it's important. It's important that you, and one other magical factor when it comes to selecting people is, I hate to use the word professionalism, but it's basically like the soft skills that you have: showing up on time for meetings, making sure that you take feedback appropriately, and return that feedback in a timely manner, and it feels like it's just as important to you as important to them. But when you select someone like Matthew for Blackpink, that guy is going to be hitting on every cylinder possible because it's his dream to go build something like that. So it's that thing that you have there where that when you do involve stakeholders and you do involve a creator, there can be a hard selection there sometimes because the stakeholders can be varied. Some of the stakeholders are people who have absolutely no idea what any of this stuff is. Maybe they're just the people footing the bill. They might be musical artists themselves who are very artistic, who very much have a voice that they want to bring into it, which means that you have to be collaborative, not only, with timelines, but with creative. Then you have, stakeholders like you and me, people who are at the very beginning of the thing where we're just making sure that the strategy and the ultimate goal is being fulfilled And when you present your work, maybe we'll give you feedback on this. Oh, you need to tighten this, or this needs to be more prominent, or whatever, before we get to the next set of stakeholders, like the musical artists that we're going to show it to. So that level of stakeholder gateways that you have to go through sometimes can get a little daunting. And especially when you do brand partnerships, if you're doing something that's like I would do stuff with National Geographic and Hyundai. Well, that's two companies that I have to make happy. And if I suddenly involve Meta in there as well, that's three companies I have to make happy.
Yeah.
So that's three levels of stakeholders, and how many people work for those companies do I have to make happy? So you have to think through, when you're selecting creators, who has the ability to understand these gates, who has the ability to understand what it means to be collaborative, not just creatively, not just timeline, but just even in the sense of like the workflow, and understanding that, maybe Hyundai did finance this, but National Geographic's the one that wants to tell the story. But Meta's the one who is ultimately going to be showcasing it on their page for Cannes or something. So you have this you have a lot of gears, and and the more you do it, the easier it is, definitely. But that comes down to selecting people who understand that, who work well within those systems. And so you do have people like Marc Wakefield, who are the master of transformations, but he's also been doing this for years and understands when I work with Rob Zombie, I'm not just working with Rob Zombie. I'm working with his label. I'm working with the company who paid for this. Maybe there's some festival that it's involved with as well. And there's Rob Zombie. So that's important. That stakeholder thing is often overlooked. And I think we focus a lot more on the hard skills, the developer skills, when we think about how to bring something to life. And I really like that you're talking about aspirational dreams, like who you would really want to work with, because that means you're really going to take it seriously and put your heart into it. And then also that idea of like I don't want to say boring, but the functional professional side of it, where you have to understand that, this can be a little crazy. So, and it is a little crazy sometimes, especially when it's so many people. And then when you involve multiple creators in the same effect, and then it's just, a lot of gears turning.
Yeah. And I think where things go sideways sometimes, though, is not understanding the stakeholders and kind of who to talk to, right? So the one thing I always say at the beginning of any of these kind of larger the scale projects that we're doing, where you have all of these people and you have like 40 people sitting in a meeting, and you see the creator show up, and for the newer ones that have no experience in this, their eyes are like popping out of their head. Yeah. They're on the side and they're slacking. They're kind of like, who are all these people? Well, great question, because that's actually what you have to figure out. So you talk to the person that has brought you into this mix, and you need to understand who's in the room. So my advice to those creators as they step into this space is certainly be a little bit humble, sit down, listen, understand who's in the room, read the room. If you don't know what you're reading, you cannot understand the players, then keep listening. And if you still don't understand by observation, then talk to the person that pulled you in and say, hey, I don't understand the hierarchy here. Because what happens is if you don't do that, then you're going to hit reply all to those 50 people in that thread. And you're going to be sending them all your big, like 50 gig assets that nobody wants.
Totally.
The VP doesn't want that. So my point is—
Or talking about features. Oh, we could use this thing, hand tracking, and that.
No,
90% of the people don't care about. Yes, exactly. There's a time and a place, and that's not it.
Exactly. So usually, and this is another thing that this will just be a short note on this kind of thing. When you have that large kind of group of people that have been introduced to the project, and everybody will start segregating off into their little groups and managing their own cluster of things that they need to work on. Understand your cluster. Right? Understand the people, because likely you will not be communicating with everybody all at once. Hopefully not, because that's chaos, maybe at the end. But understanding that you will be working within a cluster, understand the hierarchy and who you should be responding to immediately. Ask that question and say, okay, I have assets or I have questions. Who should I be talking to? You'll get the direct answer. But it's also knowing these questions to ask too. My advice in this then is just for folks to understand who their point of contact is, make sure that's the right point of contact. And if not, and if something feels off, like you're not getting the answers that you need, or it's not pushing along, just double check further along and say, are you still my person for this? But be very specific, because I think the way that things move along the best is that you ask the right questions, and they have to be very thoughtful, always with the end goal in mind. And, if you have stakeholders in place, especially in the perfect kind of scenario where some of the projects we've worked on, where you have a lot of people with their defined responsibilities, then yes, you'll be able to get the answers that you need.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's, just to hammer on this one more last time, I feel
let's go for it.
When we do ask for, as a creator, here's a good way to start it. As a creator, I spend a lot of time by myself. I can build anything pretty much in AR almost by myself. There's some stuff that I'm not as good as other people, of course, but I can pretty much build everything full stack from start to end. And you spend a lot of time alone. You spend a lot of time, I don't want to say alone like you're by yourself in a room, but you spend a lot of time isolated with the thing that you're working on. And when you start working at levels higher and higher with more and more budget, more and more money, more and more eyes and media dollars behind it, like $2-3 million of media dollars behind the work that you're building, you start to realize that isolation is not how anyone else works. So you're going to get in meetings where there are 20 people because those people are used to working in groups of people constantly all the time. And you need to be able to function there as well. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to do that all the time. It just means that you have to understand that part of your job will be collaborating with people who have very niche responsibilities. And, as an AR creator, a lot of times you're a generalist with what you're doing. You know how to publish it, you know how to build it, you know what the capabilities are. You've built one for, Coke, you've done one for Nike here and there, and that's great. Those are great. But when you're talking about like event type, large scale, just a lot of eyes on it at once, like campaign based type things, the moving pieces involved mean that there are a lot of stakeholders. And so it's always important to understand that, because as you get more involved with these, you'll start to realize like who are the stakeholders in the room? Who do I really need to care about? And I will say too, this has helped inform this knowledge of how these situations work has really helped inform how my contracts worked individually. So when I write contracts with clients, I have a clause in my contracts called Voices from the Shadows. And what Voices from the Shadows does is basically says at the beginning of our project, we want to identify who the stakeholders are and what they do. That way, when I get to the end of my project, somebody can't come in from out of nowhere, like the CEO's son or somebody, and be like, I don't like the way this one looks. And then suddenly it's all thrown into chaos again. I don't want that. So, and especially, we're individual creators developing these, which is a lot of time to go back to the drawing board and stuff. You don't really budget for that kind of stuff. So it's important to think about the stakeholders. Stakeholders are super important on these big projects. And then also individually, I would also think about doing something like Voices from the Shadows clause in your contract, where you just say like, let's just identify who's responsible for approvals, who's responsible for creative feedback. That way we just know who to look to. And that way it's not like, Nick, the IT guy, telling me like who never uses an Instagram filter in his life, telling me like, I wish I could do this with a tap and not my mouth open, which is fine, but it's fine for everyone to have feedback, but you just want to know, got to put it out there. Helps a lot.
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. These are great. I think we can talk more about this. And I want to actually talk a bit more about how we are making sure that the creators that are up and coming, let's say, they want to be sitting in on these conversations. They want to have that level of professionalism. They will have to start somewhere, right? Not everybody is going to show up. I'm going to give there are some creators that we know, and they're consistently getting the work because they show up like pros. Yeah. And when I say pros, we've had a few of them come through where their decks are just tight, right? Like the visuals, you don't have to worry about what they're saying. It is so well articulated. The actual the flow that the stakeholders can expect, and even not just the experience flow, but how they're going to be communicating. They've already kind of pegged out, here's our timeline, this is when you can expect us, this is how we're going to be communicating with you.
Totally.
If you need us to change this because it doesn't work with your communication style, we're open for that. And then also on the check-ins, like these are the things. So once you've observed a creator kind of showing up with this level of professionalism, I'm going to hazard to say that is 50% of the actual checklist that we're looking for. If they're able to show up and they're going to have a really strong set of soft skills, their technical skills are probably equally as important, not more important. But that's how, because when you have, like you said, Luke, there are a lot of people, but there's a lot of money and there's a lot of time invested into these things. So you can't screw up, basically.
Yeah.
Like we are going to definitely put someone forward.
Yeah.
And say, trust them, like we can't,
totally.
we can't derail this whole project because someone's coming in and not showing up on time, or it's very confusing, or their creative is way off base from what was asked of them,
or they lock horns with the creative directors or something. There's a lot of times where I see that too, where it'll be a lot of us have very clear creative vision. We really do. And some of us are developers. Some of us want someone to give us the creative vision to execute. Mm-hmm. And I'll say that even the people who have high creative vision, if they're great collaborators, they can work with pretty much any creative that there is, because they'll still bring their creative vision, but they understand that there is a brand creative vision going on there. Yeah. If it's something like let's say we're building something for, let's just make up something. Let's say I'm building an effect for Aperol Spritz. Aperol, alcohol brand, can't do that on Instagram.
Yep, not going to happen.
Maybe one day. Anyway, yeah. So Aperol, and I'm going to do it for Coachella, right? So I have this like kind of partnership thing. So I have a couple brands there. There are a lot of moving pieces to those, and the money that's being spent, how people want to effectively use those things, and what the outcomes are. So when you are putting your deck together, like you said, when people come up with a really nice tight deck, it doesn't need to have comps of every screen. It doesn't need to have comps for the whole experience. It didn't even really need to have comps for the experience. You could just explain what you think is like the story to tell, which I see all the time, and they love it. They eat it up because it leaves the creative director who you're going to be working with enough room to do something with what you're doing. Yeah. So having that ability to kind of emotional EQ to know that you're going to be sharing a creative space with people who get paid a lot of money to talk about whatever brand that you're about to bring to life, then you need to, one, respect what they have to say, but two, understand that the ideas you have need to have room. They need to have room to grow.
Absolutely.
And they can convey your stuff, but room to grow.
Yeah. And I think we'll finish it up on this, but I think what people also have to remember too, there is a lot of effort for sure that is going to go into producing these decks and showing up with intent and sharing with their vision so clearly. But understand that it's not just for this project, right? People are observing you during this project. You're essentially pitching for your next project during this project, because it's almost like you're always pitching for your next project, because people will continue to evaluate how you're showing up and keep that in their bank of knowledge about you, so that when they have to refer you again to another project, they'll know, wow, well, look at how well they performed on the last project. It was so easy to work with them.
Totally. And
now you've already done the legwork, right? So considering that you're investing in your future makes it a little bit easier to put in the time, because, those nights are long and those deadlines are tight. But if you keep that in mind, that's not just for this project that I'm doing this, but it's for my future possible projects that I'm securing those already by doing this now. So
totally. And just to put the cherry on top of that, it's just like saying that you are working on your brand while you're working on something else. So you always want to be working on your brand. You want to select partners and companies that help you represent what you want to represent. People will always have enough money to pay you to do something you do not want to do. That will always happen. So you need to be able to set your own limitations on, what do I want to do? So if the brand has enough money, they'll pay you to do something you don't want to do. And if you don't want to do it, then just put your foot down and say, this is not really what I want to do with my stuff. So, and I say that because when your brand is strong, people know what they get before you even start. Yep. So I heard this great quote, and I'm going to steal it. But basically, if Nike built a hotel, you kind of know what that looks like. If Hyatt built a shoe, you have no idea, because Hyatt is a logo. You could put any logo on the outside of that hotel, Marriott, DoubleTree. You don't know. You don't care. It's a commoditized thing. But when it's Nike, when Nike builds a hotel, I kind of have an idea what that might look like in my head. So what that means is they've solidified their brand space in a point to where I can bring someone on like Nike, and I can just trust that they'll be able to work with somebody like LeBron or Michael Jordan or some other artist, so to speak, and bring their vision to life, but still be Nike.
Yeah,
and
1,000%.
So it's the same thing with our stuff. Not that we're making as much money as Nike yet, one day.
Yet.
But that brand thing is strong, man. So like I picked Coachella to work on because that is me. I love music. I got albums back here and stuff. I'm obsessed with music. So it's like, of course I would want to go do that. Yeah. Is that something that I would do for any brand? Put that much work and effort into? No, definitely not. But I do it for me. I do it for me, and I do it for them. I know that I care about it, so I'm going to bring my highest work because I care about it for me, and I also care about it. I have a passion for music and hanging out with you too.
Yeah, it's fulfilling, absolutely, on so many levels, right? And then and you can't maybe do that for everything, and nor should you, right? Yeah. But there should be, if we could like even break it out to a number, 2 or 3 hero projects through the year that sustain your creative drive and inspiration, but also cultivates those relationships and just helps you kind of move forward to like, it elevates everything, right? When you have those projects kind of sprinkled into the stuff that we do just to put the roof over our heads.
They don't all have to be your magnus opus. They don't all have to be your masterpiece. But think about, what's my masterpiece this year? Mm-hmm. Yep. Which project would I really like to work on this year, so I can make that just another stronger piece for my brand? And I might have 4 or 5 other things over here I'm building that aren't that. Or might not be as strong as another thing, but once you have that one thing, it lasts for more than a year. You get to build it, you get to promote it, you get to talk about it, and then suddenly you're just, suddenly you have stuff you can build on, and people know you for certain types of work or experiences or whatever. So can't stress that enough. Build your brand.
I agree 1,000%, and so I think we'll wrap it up there, and hopefully everyone feels a little bit inspired. And then I guess the other thing that I just wanted to say on that is that if you have your magnus opus that you've decided on, then, unapologetically pursue it. Yeah. Talk to the people around that space, share it out on social, like manifest the shit out of that, because that's how it's going to happen.
Obsess over it.
Yeah. Like for real though, but don't apologize for it either, because it's your thing and it's you. So why would you apologize for you? Like, look at what happened with Matthew, and there are others as well, but Matthew verbalized it, right? So then I knew when it was time to pair. If he hadn't said anything about it, guess what? Wouldn't have known.
Totally.
Wouldn't have made the selection. It's that simple. So you have to put it out there for it to actually kind of come to fruition. And so
100%. 100%. I feel like
the homework, everybody.
That is the homework. And if you look at other people who are really strong too, like if you look at people like Piper, for instance, that is a different type of creation that she does. Those are not created creations for everybody, but neither is high fashion. High fashion is experimental, pushing the envelope to help inform later fashion. That's the point of high fashion. Yep. And that's what she does. So her effects aren't for everybody, but she pushes that envelope, and that's what her brand is, and it works super well for her. Yeah. And you just see that across the board. Everybody has these little things that they own. I do a lot of brand work, so part of mine is just like helping people understand how to navigate this stuff, because I've just had so many years of experiences in it. But other people have so much great stuff that they can market themselves with, and this is a big, open, wide world. So. Man, just that and that alone, that stuff right there, having your brand and being able to market yourself, that will help people like me and Lianne and other people out there, not just people like me. There's a ton of people out there who are trying to find creators in this space and people who know what they're doing, who can help inform not just like capabilities and how to build it, but like, what do people use? Do people actually use this kind of a thing? Do you think they'll use this? I mean, I get that question so much. Do you think people will actually use this? And it's like, hey, I live in this space. I could actually tell you if people will use this or not. So yeah.
Well, I think we had some good nuggets there, hopefully. And if you did enjoy that, absolutely feel free to tune into previous episodes, but we will be coming at you. The hope is every week, but it's not going to be Luke's birthday next week. So this one's super special. I hope you have plans to go and have a spicy marg somewhere or something fun today.
It'll be something fun. I think I have to work till late this afternoon. I'm on a pitch and then I have to fly out to Detroit next week. But so it's a little busy, but
okay. Well,
thus is the life.
Yes. We'll catch up next week to see how that went, if you could talk about it. And if not, then you can be ambiguous about it. And I'll just wish you well with that. So,
okay.
So thank you all for joining us on the Creative Catalyst podcast. And as always, I do encourage you to stay curious and, of course, keep on creating. And we will catch you